I'm here to take a look at what is Kundalini energy. Lots of people have asked me about that. What is that Kundalini energy that you work with when you do Kundalini yoga? And you know, it's much wider than what we encompass in our practice. It's much bigger. So I'll show you some pictures that have inspired me, okay, that kind of explain the way it is. This is the first one here. Kundalini energy. What is Kundalini energy? What you see here is a spiral galaxy. You know, there are patterns much bigger than we are that repeat in nature, and they're just amazing in their grandeur. There are fractals that show the same detailed design and repetitive patterns that grow ever larger or ever smaller. In this spiral galaxy here, you can see a pattern of a swirl that can be repeated in nature too. It's a massive energy flow spinning since time began. We too have energy sources that are considered vast and untapped, even though they're coming through this tiny body that we have. We all have Kundalini energy. It's dormant within everyone until it's developed. It doesn't have to stay dormant. It's possible to go into one's whole life without having explored the potential that lies within one's own body, mind, and soul. But what a shame. It requires a certain amount of vitality to find your destiny path and fulfill it. You can't do it if you're dragging around, right? So that's part of what Kundalini yoga is about, to tap into that vitality so then you can explore your potential. The search for truth has generated many schools of thought and discipline over time. And it's been explored by many cultures for thousands of years. Although the process of awakening the Kundalini energy and of transcending the ego is universal and can be found in many cultural traditions, it's in India that the philosophy and the disciplines saw their most complete development. This timetable follows the twists and turns of that great river of knowledge given to us by saints and sages of many traditions from the Indian subcontinent. And that includes Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, the wandering mendicants, and tribal shaman. Think how it must have been for them, moving away from the sounds and smells of civilization, leaving their families to sort out this call of Kundalini energy. The oldest records of Tibet tell of civilizations that were flourishing over 40,000 years ago. And the myths describe early forms of yoga and meditation. They were observing nature. They were following energy movement and flow, and they began to see patterns. The Kundalini image was most often depicted as a snake rising to symbolize the energy going up the spine and the renewal of energy, the healing and renewal. The spiral was a common symbol too, in a 3.5 turn spin. There were great global climate shifts that caused mass migrations of people. And it was these migrations that blended different cultures together, triggering the development of many new spiritual practices. Tribal shamans were experimenting with Kundalini energy thousands of years ago. A little before 1800 BC, much of the civilization of ancient India was concentrated in the north and western sections of India and what was Pakistan. There were two great cities called Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, where people had sophisticated social organizations and spiritual practices. They had running water, and there was evidence of the rudiments of yoga here. Certainly inner exploration. By 200 AD, Patanjali had compiled the oral teachings of the 6 schools of yoga into written form that included the roots of Kundalini yoga. During the same time, the esoteric knowledge of how the glands work with the chakras and how the aura could be expanded was beginning to be taught from one guru teacher to one student. The discipline of sadhana, which is daily practice to elevate consciousness, became widespread. It came to be understood that it was possible to produce spiritual and physical well-being without rejecting the senses and being a hermit in the forest, which is the way it was before that. People had to leave their families. Before this time, a person would work for 20, 30, 40 years and then leave their family and work life and learn the science of Kundalini and other yogas from a master. This led to an awakening of the philosophy of female Shakti energy that manifests the infinite divine in the finite body. When this was blended with the bhakti traditions of singing devotional songs, there was an explosion of experimentation and practice. Kundalini yoga is a blend of Shakti and Bhakti and Raj yoga. But you don't have to put your foot behind your head to raise your Kundalini energy, thankfully. Okay? So what Shakti energy is it's the primal power energy that comes from the beginning of time, from our source. And Bhakti, being devotional, it's straight from the heart. It has no limits. It has no time span. It can't be kept in a box. And Raj Yoga was the other component. And Raj Yoga is what basically makes you a sovereign citizen. It makes you so complete in your connection to your source that you don't really have to answer to the rest of society in the same way that they were trying to make people do in those days. So it makes a person it creates a personality, and the practice creates people who are rather independent. They are authentic. It had been a secret science during the time of the Mughal reign by 1469 because the rulers saw that the practitioners of this form of yogic energy could not be suppressed. The Mughals proclaimed it to be dangerous and outlawed the practice because it gave super strength to the yogic leaders of the villages. And when they were tortured to try to make them convert to the ruler's religion or pay religious taxes, they died a martyr's death with a smile, which was pretty disturbing to the rulers of the time. But this is how Kundalini Yoga got its reputation as being dangerous. The cycle of searching for a personal guru was broken with the coming of Yogi Bhajan to the West in 1969. He taught it openly and received death threats for bringing it to the United States. It was understood that we must initiate ourselves and learn the practice without a direct guru. But instead of mentoring teachers, kept a watchful eye on the students and pushed the students to do the work themselves to attain union with the divine by raising their consciousness with this practice. So we'll have just one more slide with a little bit of definitions, and then we can do questions afterwards, okay? So here are just a few basic definitions that are also included in other yogas. And it's the bandhas. But to start with, Kundalini is considered to be a coiled up energy that's dormant in people at the base of the spine, okay? It has to be activated by pumping of the navel or using breath work that comes from the navel center. And once it's activated, it drops back down to the center, to the bottom of the spine, and then comes up through every chakra, okay? And the practice is all about being able to keep it up, okay? So one of the main practices that's used with the movements and the mudras and the mantras is using the Mula Bandha. And the Mula Bandha is the root lock. It's the lock that's engaged, and when it's engaged, sends energy up the spine from the base, okay? And to be able to do it, it's like cutting off a urination or a Kegel, if you will, separate from what your breath is doing, and mostly separate from what your body movements are doing, okay? But it's the combination of having the root lock and the movement and the mantra and the eye focus that makes that energy rise, okay? The Uddiyana is the abdominal lock that sends the energy up the spine from the navel point on up. And then Jalandhara Bandha is the neck lock, where you lift up the back of your head like you have a string coming out of the top, and it makes the root lock and the neck lock come into a straight line, so there's no blockages of energy. And it makes a highway for energy to go. So that's just touching on a few of the definitions. And in the next segment, we'll do a lot more definitions. So maybe you can check into what is Kundalini Part 2 next, okay? And be sure and check out this website, yogalotusok.com, and see the rest of them, okay? Hope to see you there. Thank you.